Should you buy a PlayStation 4 in 2018? The PlayStation 4 is Sony's current offering on the console market, and originally released back in 2013 for $400 US, it's done incredibly well, currently being the best-selling console of this generation. But the real question is, should you buy one? Is it worth owning compared to an Xbox One or a Switch? Well, that's what we're going over today as we go over the hardware, the software, accessories, and finally compare it to its competition. Welcome to Stuff We Play, home of everything weird and retro, and actually none of that in this case. We're talking about the PS4, and if that sounds cool to you, why not subscribe? So the PlayStation 4, Sony's current offering. Well, without further ado, let's get right into it. PS4 itself was originally released back in 2013. This is the launch model right here, and it's definitely a bit of an upgrade over to PS3. Admittedly, it's not nearly as big of a jump from the PS2 to PS3, but it's definitely noticeable. Much like the PS3, it uses Blu-ray discs, but despite this and despite having Blu-ray player functionality, it's not backwards compatible with any previous PlayStation units, which is weird. I guess if you want the best all-around PlayStation, I'd still say just get a PS3 instead. Also of note here is its controller, the DualShock 4. Well, I'm more partial to its predecessor, the DualShock 3, since I just really like the PS2 controller, and the only way I thought you could make that better was by making it wireless. It's still extremely comfy in the hand. I actually like how the DualShock 4 feels in my hands a bit better than any of Nintendo's current offerings, though I will admit I feel like the Xbox One controller is just a little bit more comfortable. It's still a fantastic controller though, and it even has this really cool light on the back of it. A few years later though, we got some PS4 revisions. We got the PS4 Pro, which is a more beefed up PS4 that can kind of sorta do 4K, but not really, which now retails at $500 Canadian because I live in Canada, and then also the PS4 Slim, which is a little smaller than the original offering, but was sold at the same price. You can't actually get the original PS4 nowadays, but if you can find one of those used, that's probably your best option for these hardware-wise because, well, it's the cheapest. I usually see them for about $250 Canadian, though you could potentially find them for even cheaper if you look hard enough. And along with being beautiful in this black color scheme, it's had some really nice variations, my favorite being the Special Edition Spider-Man Edition one. So the PS4 is extremely capable hardware-wise and has a great controller. But how is the software on it? Well, that's what we're about to get into. So before we get into the games, let me go over some apps. The PS4 is really great as just kind of a set-top box thing. Netflix, Hulu, Sony's weird music thing, if you actually use that thing, it's all here. But along with that, it has access to the PlayStation Network, where you can download games, and yes, even the PlayStation Plus features, where you can pay a bit to play online and also get some free games every month, except paying a bit monthly kind of defeats the purpose of them being free because you paid, but it's still really cool. And actually, my buddy the Golden Bolt does a series called Plus One, where he reviews the games that are given away for PS Plus members every month. If you're like me and prefer single player stuff, there's no real reason to get it. And speaking of games, instead of just going over some I liked, I have my entire PS4 collection I have with me right now, and I'm going to briefly go over every single game that I own. Very briefly. Perhaps insultingly briefly, but I hope you enjoy this kind of rapid fire thing I'm about to do. Going alphabetically, the first game we have is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. It's Assassin's Creed, but with pirates, and honestly my favorite game in the series. Yeah, it's kind of repetitive, but the stealth gameplay here is still a lot of fun, and also pirates. Next up, we have Birthdays and Beginnings. It's the prequel to my favorite console God Sim game of all time, with that of course being Happy Birthdays for the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, Happy Birthdays being a bit of a better game, if only because you can play it portably on the Switch. But Beginnings is still good, even if it is a little pricey and hard to find nowadays. Next up we have Bubsy, The Woolly Strike Back. Who the hell asked for this one? Dead or Alive Extreme 3. If you like cleavage and volleyball, then this one's for you. However, there is such an uproar about this one, which is surprising since there wasn't much of an uproar about Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball or Dead or Alive Extreme 2. They didn't actually release it stateside. However, if you import it from Japan or Asia, there is an English language subtitle option. Dragon Quest Builders is also a great game. Kind of think of Minecraft but with a story, but also with Dragon Quest. It's a lot of fun, and while it's potentially better on the Nintendo Switch, it's actually usually a lot cheaper on the PS4 since it came out there about a year earlier. There are also a slew of great Final Fantasy games on there. Final Fantasy Type 0, which is a great, more action-oriented Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy 15, which is also a more action RPG Final Fantasy game. And then also Final Fantasy 12, The Zodiac Age, which is a really great remake of Final Fantasy 12 on the PS2. And while I know that's a polarizing title, it's really solid. I know a lot of people who absolutely love this game. In fact, it's my boyfriend's favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. But let's be honest here, if you want the absolute best RPG for the PS4, you're just going to get Persona 5. Next up, we have Injustice: Gods Among Us. It's a really great fighting game with DC characters. It's on pretty much everything, but the PS4 version's solid. And yeah, even though it says I paid $44 for it, it's nowhere near that much nowadays. So we also have Knack and Knack 2, also known as mediocre launch game and slightly less mediocre sequel. The Mega Man Legacy collections, both 1 and 2. I have 2 right here, as that's the one I choose to get, and it's better here on PS4 than on the Switch for one reason. You actually have all the games on the disc, and you don't have to download any of them separately. Seriously, what the hell, Capcom? Metal Gear Solid 5, it's a solid game. It's a conclusion to the Metal Gear series, and while Ground Zeroes is more or less just kind of a tech demo prequel to the Phantom Pain, both of these games are so cheap, and even if it's not the ultimate story that Kojima wanted, it's still worth like $10 that both of these will cost you nowadays. Mighty Number 9, don't play it. Night Trap, it's a game that was actually re-released by Limited Run Games, who's put out a lot of great games on PS4. It's kind of a remastered version of that weird Sega CD game from the 90s, except this one comes with like a poster and stuff. If you like really cheesy B-movies, you're going to enjoy Night Trap, though keep in mind this one's on systems such as the Nintendo Switch and the Sega CD. The Sega Genesis Classics Collection. One of the best compilations of older games I've ever seen. It has your Sonic games, it has Gunstar Heroes, Alien Soldier, Rystar, Streets of Rage, and while it has some weird omissions like Sonic the Hedgehog 3, it's still an absolutely solid collection that's worth every penny. Song of the Deep, it's kind of a Metroidvania-esque thing, except underwater and published by GameStop of all people, but this was $15 at launch and is even less now, and definitely worth picking up. Transformers Devastation, also known as really big robot things destroy cities and fight other big robot things. It's fun. Wipeout, the Mega Collection. This actually has 3 of the previous Wipeout games remastered for the PS4. It's really solid and probably my favorite racing game on the PS4. We have Yakuza Kiwami, which is a game that was highly recommended to me by my friend Bolt, and which I unfortunately haven't played yet. But coolly enough, it has a steelbook. I should really actually play this game. And the final game I'm going to mention is a really weird one. Imagine a game that teaches you how to play guitar, and that's Rocksmith, mainly Rocksmith 2014. As someone who plays a little bit of guitar himself, what I find really cool about this is there's a mode essentially where you play Guitar Hero but with a real guitar. And I'll be honest, that's way cooler than it has any right to be. But yeah, these are all the games I own for the PS4, and I probably missed some. I mean, you know, they're your Call of Duties and whatnot, but those aren't really my thing. But these are all the ones I have and what I think about them. But in the next section, we're going over accessories and whether you should buy a Nintendo Switch, PS4, or Xbox One. So let's get into PS4 accessories, and honestly there's not a lot of weird ones. I know the PS2 had like vibrators and stuff, but really the only kind of weird one for the PS4 is this official Logitech racing wheel, which I believe was bundled with one of the Gran Turismo games. I mean, does this wheel really have anything that separates it from any other great force feedback wheel?
No.
But is this an opportunity for me to say that the best way to play Gran Turismo is with a force feedback wheel? Yes. There's one big thing I haven't mentioned yet, and that's PlayStation VR. Something I've experienced, but not much. I don't own a PSVR, and I don't feel confident enough talking about that on my own. So here, once again on my channel for like the 5th time this year, is my buddy, the Golden Bolt, to tell you all about PlayStation VR.
Let's do this.
In October 2016, the biggest addition to the PS4's hardware library hit the shelves, and that addition's name was the PSVR. Originally codenamed Project Morpheus, PSVR was introduced as the most budget-friendly option for consumers looking to dive into the virtual reality market. Its 2 major competitors, the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, both require very beefy PCs to run, which, combined with the costs of the headsets themselves, could easily run you into the thousands even today after price drops. Meanwhile, a PS4 with a PSVR at launch would only run you $700, or a PS4 Pro would bump that up to $800. Today, the PSVR only costs $200, although that may not include some of the required peripherals. Speaking of those peripherals, let's talk about how the PSVR works. The system uses either the DualShock 4 for its games, or in the case of the more motion-based games, it'll use one or two of the PlayStation 3's Move controllers. If you picked up a Move on the cheap back in 2012 or so, you lucked out because these controllers go for a pretty penny now. Using the PS4's camera peripheral and the lights on both the headset and the Move controllers, the PSVR will track your position in your room and react accordingly. Depending on how large your room is, the room's lighting, and many other factors, this can either be incredibly impressive or incredibly bad. There's a reason these things are enthusiast devices first and foremost. They take a lot of setup, both for your room and yourself. Additionally, many people have motion sickness issues with any form of virtual reality, and as such, the games are often limited in movement options or speed. Thankfully, most PSVR games have a load of options for you to go over to curate the experience however you may need. Just get used to sitting in a bunch of menus and tutorials the first time you play any new VR game. I personally have had almost no negative responses to virtual reality at all, so I've been lucky enough to play pretty much every VR game that I've wanted. And with that, let's briefly talk about those games. One thing to note is that VR as a medium is still developing, and as such, so many of the PSVR's current library are experimental games. You absolutely need to know this going in. There are a ton of genres that are underrepresented or outright missing. Moreover, VR games are often priced at a premium because of the lower install base and the cost of development, meaning that you're often paying more for games that are shorter. And the kicker, the one you're probably thinking right now, is that these games often don't look super great, especially on a flat screen like the one you're watching this video on. Virtual reality needs to run at a minimum of 90 frames per second and simultaneously across two screens for the illusion of reality to exist. If you thought Skyrim looked pretty bad on PS3 at 30 frames per second on one screen, Skyrim VR looks like a friggin' PS2 game. Despite all this, when the headset's on, VR delivers an experience like nothing else can. Genuinely, once you play in virtual reality, it changes how you look at regular games. There are so many games that I wish have full VR support, most notably Alien Isolation. With virtual reality sales as a whole starting to slow down and the PS4 entering its twilight years, the future of the PSVR is a bit uncertain. Until we know if the inevitable PS5 has a second generation of PSVR or continues with the current headset, there's no saying whether the current PSVR as a whole will become a bargain bin item like the PS Move or a premium collector's item. But that's a story and a buying guide for another day. Back to you, James.
So yeah, that was really cool, dude, but here's another thing. We gotta decide, should you buy a PS4, Xbox One, or Switch? Well, I can already tell you that I have some strong thoughts comparing it to the Switch, but also admittedly, I don't own an Xbox One. So also here, once again, on my channel is my buddy TokenGeek to tell you if you should buy a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One.
If you're looking to buy a game console and you're deciding between the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, honestly, I'm not sure which to recommend to you. It all kind of depends on what you're looking for.
If you're, for example, a gamer that is seeking power to play all of your AAA titles, I'd say the Xbox One X is the best console between the two families. If you don't care for power but are looking for a cheaper console that can act more as a family entertainment device, I do still think the Xbox One is the better bet, seeing as the S is a super cheap 4K player. But if you're looking for a large library of great exclusives, yeah, the PlayStation 4 is the better bet no matter the cost. The Xbox One is a great family of systems with some good exclusives on their own and no doubt, including Rare Replay, Sunset Overdrive, and the Ori series. But it doesn't match the sheer amount of crazy exclusive games that the PlayStation family offers. In my own personal preference, the PlayStation 4 is the no doubt winner between the two. No amount of teraflops or the extra money in my pocket would drive a sale when the console itself doesn't have the same amount of compelling exclusives in its backlog. Yeah, the power and cost for each of the Xbox One systems are both nice objectively, but if you're buying a game console, you're buying it just for that. The PS4 can play every single third-party game the Xbox One can and then some, so I think it's more worth it.
So yeah, I kind of saw that coming. But the real question is, should you buy a PS4 or a Switch? And it really depends. If you really want the most powerful thing out there to play games, don't even buy a console, get a PC, but you probably don't need me to tell you that. The PS4 has a bunch of great exclusives, and they definitely look better than on the Switch. But the one thing the Switches favor is that, yes, you can take it everywhere. So the real question is, you want games that look a little bit better and have a higher frame rate, and also, you know, probably come out a bit earlier, then get a PS4. However, if you want games that might come out a little bit later and not look as pretty, but can be taken anywhere on the go, albeit with like a 2-hour battery life, then get a Nintendo Switch. But all in all, is a PS4 still worth owning in 2018? If you're thinking that, yeah, maybe I might want to buy this thing, then absolutely. I love this console. It's a great console. You know, many think I'm a Nintendo or Sega fanboy, but let nobody tell you differently. I love the PlayStation 4. But you know what? I maybe begin to ramble on just a bit. Do you have any memories with any of the PlayStation consoles? Let me know down in the comments section below. And while you're at it, why don't you subscribe to Stuff We Play for more great content like this, or even back us on Patreon, because every dollar earned from Patreon does go back into the channel itself. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Stay classy, and I'll see you next time.